All right, today is June 6th, 2018. This is the kubeadm office hours. Today, the tentative plan is to go through and kind of almost do like a doc/test sprint planning. What I'll do is, we currently have some items that are on the agenda. We'll go through that. Then what I was hoping to do is to almost do like a brainstorming session for individual things, individual items. I also want to I want to assign one or two technical leads to kind of follow up and sort of manage the current set of docs issues. I'll volunteer as one of them. I need another person to manage from the technical side, not from the doc side. So is there someone else from the technical side that wants to be on point to kind of triage all of the issues that we have and make sure that there's consistency? Don't all raise your hands at once. Come on, somebody's got to fall on the sword. It's not just me.
I mean, I've been doing part of that already, I guess.
Right.
But not really very efficient in terms of the technical part.
Well, how about any questions with regards to docs and issues that we want to do, contact Lubomir and myself on Slack.
What's involved with the task? I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
So right now we are, as part of this, we're going to kind of like do a walkthrough of the docs and make all the issues. But somebody needs to rationalize. We have several issues that are logged currently in the kubeadm repo, as well as separate issues in the website. We need somebody to rationalize all that stuff and to make sure that we're actually getting things fixed and not having like 10 issues for the same thing. Yeah. So that's kind of what's involved.
Okay.
Quick question: Are we ever planning to version our documentation?
We do version our documentation.
Okay, cool.
All right, so again, because I don't have somebody volunteering for note taking, I am slow to do both.
Oh, I can take notes.
Okay. All right, first, let's go through the first agenda item. Jennifer and Lubomir. The pending 111 docs, the umbrella issues listed there. What did you want to speak to this one, Lubomir or Jennifer?
So Jennifer, the core DNS issues are mostly, PRs are mostly merged right now. We only have one remaining, and it needs a little bit of a grammar check in there.
Yep, I've got it open.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about this core DNS service thing that we have. So basically, the SIG network people confirmed to me that we are not renaming the core DNS servers to core DNS, and it remains kubeDNS.
Right, I got that, and I saw the comment in the issue when that PR is actually merged. I only wanted to flag it because it seemed like a usability issue I didn't want to stay silent on. It wasn't a blocker. I mean, the argument makes sense, right? But it does, I think, represent some potential user confusion in the short run.
I actually think it alleviates user confusion because this is something they should not care about. And if under the hood, it switches technologies from Sky to Core, which is what we're kind of doing, then the aspect of Kubernetes managing DNS makes perfect sense to keep the name consistent.
Yep, I understand that. It's when we call it out that it has the potential to get confusing, that's all.
Yeah, I went through pieces of the docs to eliminate Sky DNS references as part of like precursor to this conversation.
Cool.
All right. The next one is so I would like to mention that all the commands are now submitted as PRs. We are only missing the one which Lucas is adding right now, which is, I think, the upgrade node, I think, command.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we are only missing this one. Everything else is submitted, so we are fine in terms of the commands.
Mhm.
So the user stories, now these are kind of problematic because I'm not sure if we should be doing this like in the next couple of weeks, or should we expand them like in between 1.11 and 1.12. So that's really like a decision has to be made here in terms of milestone.
One second, let me take a look at the kubeadm user stories.
For what it's worth, I have a recommendation from the from the doc side, which is that we not try to deal with any of this for 111 because we simply don't have time. Even if y'all get started on the content, we're not figuring out whether it should go against the 111 branch or the master branch and dealing with potential rebases, figuring out reviews, because this is pretty substantial changing stuff. This is not a great time in the release cycle to be trying to get this kind of thing in for a release. It's the kind of thing that's really optimal to do at any time once 111 is out the door. Or at least once we've frozen the docs repo, and then those PRs can all go against master and we can iterate on them however we need to.
So some of these user stories are, if you want to call them user stories, are just control flow. Let's save this particular item because it's not really a user story until we kind of do the walkthrough, and then we'll kind of like start to enumerate a list.
Okay, sounds good.
Sounds good. The general principle still applies.
Yeah, I agree. It's just logistics are always tough. The best time for developers to do docs is after the freeze, and the worst time for docs to subsume content is after the freeze. So it's just a logistical pain in the butt.
So we can brainstorm and plan and talk about submitting against master, and stuff will still come together when the release happens.
Yeah. All right. Next agenda item.
Yeah, so this one is about the, we had a bit of an argument what we should do with configuration files when should we embed them inside the website? Should we generate them, or should we link to GoDocs? So I'm not exactly sure what we should do here. I think the decision was to include the current config like Alpha 2 and also link to the GoDocs as well.
So I'm of the opinion that you can talk about using the config. Well, I don't know. The config is really large, right? So it's a lot of content. And we don't even have a page for all this stuff, right? There's no landing home that talks about configuration. And we really should. So like part of the setup page, and we'll do it in the walkthrough, would basically have a shell out to a whole separate page which goes through config in all its gory detail. I don't really have too strong of opinion. I have opinions, but at this point I'm like, whatever we need to do to get this done and make people happy enough. My personal opinion is when you mirror content, it becomes maintenance burden for people over time, and we're going to have more maintenance burden. And I know that Jennifer's like docs are a maintenance burden, but like developers have a tendency to ignore things. So then it becomes an issue, right? But if you canonically link to something that gets updated within the GoDoc references as part of the code, it's a forcing function for us to actually, as part of PR reviews, make sure that's up to date. Mm-hmm. So that's my opinion, and I'll stop there. We just need to pick a path and go. So
we do, but I think what we need to do for the moment is to branch, because I'm not averse to having a conversation about the GoDocs, and I understand the argument. Reference docs are always hard, however you slice them. And yes, the closer to the code the content lives, the more likely it's going to get maintained. But that said, using the GoDocs, relying on the GoDocs represents a departure from anything else that we do on the website. I can't make a call on that. If you want to bring a proposal to SIGDocs, that would be great. This could conceivably solve problems for other SIGs and other parts of the Kubernetes ecosystem and the docs. I don't know. I don't think we can just make a call about this for 111, but I would welcome, sort of a proposal to consider, sort of the cases where the GoDocs approach would be appropriate, what the UX for that would be like, and then we could take that up as a proposal to SIGDocs. Generating reference docs of all sorts is a thing that's on us, right? That's why we, with the one sort of wrinkly exception of the kubeadm docs, because that's a fairly new thing. But, I'm not going to stand on my sword about the GoDocs. First of all, it's not really up to me. It's up to the SIGDocs maintainers of the group. But I think you can see where this is a departure from the way we've done things in the past. I agree. I mean, the thing about that config file, even if you guys do generate it and dump it on the page, is it's not very useful, right? It's the default config, and the point is to explain what's going on there. The point is not to just throw a sample at people.
No, this gets into as the walkthrough. So I'm fine with picking. I want the least amount of friction right now at this stage, so folks can just go. So
Right.
if somebody wants to maintain the configuration apparatus, so Lubomir, the action item here is basically we're going to generate or dump the data into the docs and try to find a long-term path going forwards that makes sense.
Okay. We also have to handle the different versions of the config file because people.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Tim, but what about replacing the config file with the instruction about how to print the default?
So yeah, that was part of the proposal. We also wanted to mention the new command to print, but this is going to print the latest version. Maybe we should, I don't know, we should probably include a history of the config file. This is how the config used to look like in Alpha 1. Now we have this.
No,
And
we need to do that because the docs are in fact versioned.
Yes, I was just going to say that. So the docs are versioned, but what we should call out is there should be a deprecation plan for some fields. So who's going to take point on the configuration bit?
So I'm going to basically import the latest generated config we have.
Okay. Once we get that in, I think we should probably do a separate walkthrough on just config as well as items for troubleshooting. So let's make a stance and just say let's get the generated content in there. It's already versioned, so we can go back. So we do need to do both. But once it's in there, let's do a separate walkthrough on the deets because this will affect a lot of troubleshooting issues that are going to happen in the 111 timeframe because we've changed config so drastically.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Is there an owner for that action item?
We have to make a separate one for this because we have it on the Lucas proposal about generating the config. I'm going to make a separate issue for it.
Right.
That would be useful because the one issue we've got now has a couple of different things muddled up in it.
It does. Let's almost even close that issue in preference for the new one.
And then we can sort out. There's multiple things going on there, and we can sort those out and figure out when to address them. And who, that sounds good.
Okay, I'm going to do that.
List of known bugs in our issue tracker. This possibly overlaps with the above, and it does overlap with the above. I think it's kind of on Lubomir and myself to rationalize all of the issues that are kind of flying around. I think we'll leave that for the next part. So one thing we traditionally do as part of Heptia, which is kind of super useful, is we literally walk the docs together and kind of call out issues as we see them, or walk the code together and call out issues as we see them. I find it highly useful, and that's kind of what I intended on doing with some of this. And I wanted to use it as a brainstorming session. So if folks have items that they are unaware of, if you can just brainstorm on the enumerate the docs list portion. And what I will do here. What I'm hoping to do is to start to get that list together, and then Lubomir and myself will try to, anything that's not already tracked, we'll try to get it in place and try to get those PRs against them. Does that seem like a reasonable approach to people right now? Sound good? I see thumbs up. So, all right, so let's once more into the breach, right? The first portion here, that there are separate tabs up on the top, and I'm not gonna go into content structure, I'm just gonna try and separate out the pieces, right? One thing that's confused me is we have a creating HA clusters with kubeadm, and we have a using kubeadm to create a cluster. This always like confused me, because in order, I would almost like to say creating a single node cluster and saying using kubeadm, or create a single node cluster with kubeadm. Is that okay with folks?
Sounds good.
Right. So Chuck, if you're taking notes, that's kind of like the first item.
Yeah, just that's bothering me too. And this is on docs to fix. If reordering things, that's
it won't matter. The content structure will still be the same for the links. It's just the name and the title. So.
Yep.
So inside of using kubeadm to create a cluster, let's walk through some of the details here and see. There are issues I know for sure. Yeah.
So I can make a proposal here. What me and Rajan Sandeep from Coordinates did is actually I copy pasted the whole page in a Google Docs, and then you can easily comment on the side, you know.
Oh.
And that's how we discussed some pages.
Sure, I like that idea. Do you want to copy paste this page, and then we can actually go to a link and we can start to bike shit on it? The one thing I wanted to do is that, like, this page is super dense, right? Like, so once you have the copy, let me know, and I'll switch tabs to it. Got a tab, Lubomir, or got a link?
Just a second. Link is in chat.
All right.
So this one is for the HA. Do you want for the rest?
I wanted the first one, but HA1, we're actually currently working on a separate client, cleaning up some of the details there.
Okay.
The first one is the one that the most common user story, just creating a single node cluster or using kubeadm to create a cluster.
Okay.
Actually, I think it's more creating a single master cluster rather than a single node cluster, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
creating a single master cluster with kubeadm.
Yes. I think the naming comes from, well, is basically historically motivated, because for the HA we always had to do some stuff by hand. It was not entirely supported by kubeadm. I mean, this is hopefully going to change, but while this is still the case, I think it is worth some mentioning.
Yes.
So it kind of copy pasted the logo as well, but never mind.
So just while you're doing the copy pasting, the one thing I wanted to update for the instructions is after kubeadm is installed, I wanted to pre-pull the images before you actually do init. I talked with Lucas about this. Any yays or nays to that one? The reason why I want to do a pre-pull images is because sometimes init gets wedged, right? There's a number of issues that kind of occur. A vast majority of them is kubeadm init failed, and there's all kinds of connectivity problems that can potentially happen. But if you do the pre-pull images as a first step of initializing your masters, you know for certain that you've kind of eliminated a whole case of problems.
Well, that happens in the pre-flight checks now.
It does, but
you want it to be independent.
I want it to be a separate step because it forces the upfront usage.
All right.
Because what I'm trying to do is eliminate the number of kubeadm init failed issues that kind of just flow in. That's like the most prevalent one that I see from the field.
Well, I think if it's just a separate step that runs after like the initial pre-flight, that should be fine as well, as long as like the output shows that that step is running when it fails, instead of just randomly failing during another step.
It should now, so that seems reasonable too.
But I do like the idea of being able to have it as a separate step that you can explicitly call out to as well. Because that would allow for better staging of like golden images for clusters.
So call it out, yes, yay or nay. We've got both sides now.
So I think what we have right now is kind of okay with the pre-flight. I'm not sure if we have to add something here.
I think that it's a logical place to call that out early, and to express to users that is optional.
I like that, and it's a totally an optional parameter, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it has a header that says that this is optional and that it is useful in the context of priming, things like virtual machine images or something, then I believe that it's a very useful addition to the docs.
Okay, that sounds great. It's right in the middle.
So I share the second link with this page in particular.
Okay.
I'll try and keep up adding docs to what we're discussing, but no guarantee I'm going to get them all.
So we're 20, wow, it's a big logo. So here's a question that I don't know the answer to. Does anyone care about this besides us? Like we put this extra content in there, which is, I think it's good to have it in some reference thing, but does it make sense to have it in the mainline documentation?
This probably makes more sense to have it in the repo, I think. Because it's kind of developer specific, I mean admin specific as well, but I don't think this should be in the, because it's going to be easier for us to maintain it in the local repository.
I agree. So,
for what it's worth, it's atypical for following any pattern that might be available throughout the docs.
right. You could put a link here. You could link to this. Link to location on state of features.
Could we do that for the comments about beta and GA also? That's seriously non-standard. Promising future state is just not a thing it's a good idea to do in the docs.
We do, the problem is we kind of do want to call it out because there's all kinds of questions people have about using the tool, right?
Okay.
Can
we do a little bit, maybe not be quite so precise. Not soon, not during or either just, we're planning to move it to GA as soon as possible or something like that, but just make it vaguer.
Sure.
It's awful precise at the moment. Work is in progress to move to GA. I mean, this is all true, and probably y'all are going to make good on this, quicker than other teams might, but it's just in general.
I get it. I agree. The implementation creating the cluster may change slightly as the tool evolves, but the overall implementation, I don't even like this statement at all. Commands under kubeadm alpha. Okay, I don't know what to do with this. I don't like it. Thoughts?
I would just take it out. It doesn't say anything. It really doesn't.
Oh, it does explain that we have an alpha command and eventually gonna remove it.
Well, but that's alpha state. I mean, any commands under kubeadm alpha are supported on an alpha level. It's like,
it's not like we actually have SLAs for what the different commands mean. Is like supported on an alpha level just a way of saying we're going to ignore you if you have problems with this? Like,
it basically, there are guarantees that basically say like we will. It's letting people know that we will break them across releases. Once we get into beta, there are guarantees for beta command line args that you have to support it for 3 releases, and same with GA. So there are SLOs or expectations. That's probably a better word, around the behavior of command lines. So, but I do. Go ahead.
sorry, Tim. No, but that applies everywhere. That's not unique to kubeadm. So
I agree. I'm just for nixing this.
yes.
So we already have references for the kubeadm alpha command, so we can possibly remove this sentence right there.
Tim, if you go into a suggesting mode, you can just delete it and it'll show up as a suggestion.
All right. Support timeframes. Kubernetes are generally supported 9 months in the period. I don't feel like this belongs here. I feel like this is a general statement that belongs elsewhere.
Do we have this anywhere from the main repository? Like for
I do think it should be part of setup somewhere. Like you'd almost have setup to outline the versions that are currently in support. Right?
So
Like,
we have, that section caught my eye too when I went looking for information elsewhere in the docs. We have more general information that doesn't provide specific release numbers and specific dates. I couldn't find anything this precise, but I agree it does not belong in kubeadm, and I'm happy to take an action item back to SIGDocs to say, okay, because we've been trying to get our hands around all of this stuff, right? Because our versions need to map. So
I do appreciate the group wordsmithing. I'm just trying to figure out if this is the most effective use of everyone's time. If there are other items that folks can think about, feel free to add to the enumeration list. And after we pop off this doc, maybe we can go to some of those list items. I kind of feel like we're going to be doing a bunch of this, walking through as a sort of subgroup.
I made us all a spreadsheet with everything that I could find that was an explicit kubeadm topic, including things that might need to go away. So I will link to that from the notes, and then people can look at questions I have from that.
Before you begin, objectives, secure installation, this all makes sense. Add a step pre-pull, make it optional, init. Including a restaurant guide. But before you init though, there needs to be like a link to config somewhere here. Like something that outlines, because it says it's like notes afterwards. I don't know what other people think. Like right now we have this like you have the command listed there, but then you have the context of, hey, it's listed here. I don't know. Is this what's the format that for command line args and stuff in the docs? Is it to do notes after the command line listed, or is it to say like here are all the preconditions and then here's the command? I'm asking you, Jennifer.
Sorry, I was looking at my spreadsheet. That's the kind of thing that belongs in prerequisites, is my first glance. Not to initialize, but, well.
No, all the notes for kubeadm init.
Oh.
It's basically, we called out the command and then we said,
Right.
hey, before you do this.
This shouldn't this be pointing to the configuration file as instead of you can also specify a configuration file? Like this could point to the configuration file, which contains all of the
I mean, these
things
bits
that you can
all look
configure.
like things that need to be interleaved in the relevant procedure, right?
These are all things you need to think about before you call this command.
You need to choose a pod network plugin in the next step. So is this more like a checklist? You know,
Yeah.
things you need to gather before you start?
It is. It's basically like, these are the preconditions.
Yep.
So with regards to consistency in the docs.
We don't have consistency at this level. I mean, we have prerequisites, but that's more like you need a cluster, all right, for a task or a tutorial. That said, the prerequisite section is the closest thing we've got to a standard for that kind of content. It should also be rewritten to look more like prerequisites. If you want to read more about the flags, it's like, okay, that's not really a thing you have to do. That is kind of like a note, but it's like a note that belongs in prerequisites. I'm getting too wordy here, sorry.
And we also want to deprecate some of these flags, by the way. I think. So I think that we should unify this under config. And like say this is our config, and also say that this is the pod network plugin, and then you can call kubeadm init.
I agree. Here's what the output should look like. This needs to be updated because this is going to change.
Now that's a bit of a problem because we change the output all the time. I mean, we have to maintain this. So I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay, let's finish off this doc, and then who wants to be the owner of this particular one with all the comments and the markup?
Well, I guess I can do this as well. If others have comments, please add them. Google Docs allows us to add as many comments as we want.
Yeah, I can go in. I think this would definitely be more efficient. I can go in and move stuff around and ask questions about things that might need to be added once things get moved.
Mm-hmm. So the first part of the setup is we definitely need a precursor to setup that outlines support. This needs to change. So it says create a single master or whatever, kubeadm, and hopefully punch it to the top, because the fact that this is dyslexiated is confusing, right?
Yep, let me take care of that one. That's not a problem.
Okay. Then there's the, we'll get into the other guides in just a second here. But I'm trying to be as efficient and fast as possible. There's a bunch of details here that don't make a lot of sense. So why don't we, I would like someone else besides just Lubomir falling on this one. I'm going to throw Chuck, Liz, or Jason on this. So one of you pick.
Sorry, which one are we talking about? Or what task are you talking about?
Someone needs to rationalize the comments and work together with Lubomir and Jennifer on the main setup doc.
Oh, for single? Yeah, that's fine. I can do that.
Okay. All right. Next one, the one that needs like a metric ton of tender love and care, from my perspective, is the troubleshooting doc. What I'd like to kind of do is in the notes, are there other conditions that folks are aware of that are common issues that they see or have seen that are not kind of listed here?
So me and Jason discussed that probably like the link of issues, like the filtered label issues we have, should probably go here because the users can immediately check if we have already covered this particular problem they're experiencing. So I think this was the best place, but Jennifer mentioned that we should track it somewhere else.
Well, not if these are ongoing issues, but if there are known issues in 111 that are planned to be fixed, they go in the tracking issue. They go in the workarounds and the release notes. But if they are like known things that are kind of stable known things that you don't know when you're going to fix, they go here.
We can basically.
Is that clear? Does that make sense?
It does. The one thing we need to do is rationalize this list. I've already assigned a separate issue. This issue is, one second. So the troubleshooting guide here, I've already assigned Liz as part of this. If there are known issues, what we should do is kind of rally on this one, but this whole troubleshooting guide needs to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb, because right now some of these things don't even apply. And I'd much rather have it be up to date with things, with aspects that are useful, with things that people have actually seen. Like I don't even want to know if I want to open a Google Doc on that one, because it's.
I think that.
Yeah, I think some things, especially like standing up a kubeadm cluster in AWS, where there are some known flags that you have to set, or it's probably a good place to add some of that here.
So here's a big problem that I don't have an answer to. Our cluster guide is very easy and friendly for pre-provisioned nodes that don't integrate with cloud providers. What's the current state of the external cloud provider integration docs, and can we link to it in some way as the after thing for or a precondition for kubeadm? Jennifer, I don't know the state of that, other than like I know that it's all hand wavy.
It's all hand wavy. I've been trying to get an answer because this is breaking umpteen gajillion things right now. They're supposed to be moved out. I'm supposed to be getting a status. I'm real sorry to continue to hand wave, but I will take an action item to push on the SIG to get resolution this week. I'll tell you, Mike, I'll give you a guess, for right now, I think for 111, we're going to have to at least link out to those topics, even if we don't provide an easy way to navigate to them. They're still getting built as part of the doc site. That content all still exists. So if we have links in there, they're not going to break for now. For now. And if that content goes away on the 111 site, on the 111 release, I'll be on the hook to fix it, but that doesn't solve the problem of the content itself. So this is maybe another argument to just make sure we leave it in for 111, because I don't think we have the bandwidth to fix all the things that'll break if we pull it.
So I can say that the internal tree cloud provider things don't have any docs, but the external ones, do the external ones have docs?
Some of them, I'd have to go and look.
Yeah, I haven't come across any of them. I was looking for those the other day.
So the magic of the external cloud provider is that this has been ongoing across several releases, and the whole hope and goal was that you'd be able to post, just similar to how you do CNI, you'd be able to just do an apply as a last step for your given cloud provider, and just magic. But there's no. It's nowhere near that state from last I heard, and there's a bunch of weird oddities that you need to do to make things just actually work.
Is there even a roadmap for moving the in-tree cloud providers to external right now? The last I saw was just kind of new stuff's external, and the in-tree stuff's kind of steady state right now.
It was supposed to be pushed out long ago. I don't know the state of these things.
The only update is that in the tree it says this is deprecated, but the replacement's not done yet. Also, I think you're talking about when you pass in cloud provider equals external, right? Or is this something else? Because I thought that was deprecated.
No, well, there's supposed to be a magic hand wavy future. where this is what I've been told. This is what.
Yeah, no, this sounds like it's just not. It's vaporware at this point.
Yes, it's total vaporware. Who wants to be the cloud provider integration person? I'm kind of looking at Jason.
Oh, I have notes for AWS, but that's all I've got.
How about Jason and Chuck?
I'm good working on it. I'm hesitant to be kind of sole and primary on it.
How about the buddy system? Power of 3 right here. Because it's a mess. I don't know. I don't have a good answer. And we need to really link it to the docs so that people actually know what to do. Because that a lot of the questions that people have are like, how do I integrate with my cloud provider?
That's interesting. I haven't found it. I haven't found that to be true because there are no docs. It just doesn't seem like people are actually doing that.
Well, what happens is you get a manifestation of issues that get filed, which are basically bad setup for a cloud provider.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen that recently, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
I put a link to the stuff you can't navigate to, but you find it when you search. That's still in the doc site, in the chat. There is also some content about cloud providers that's kind of officially sanctioned still. I'm not quite sure why it's there. So yeah, the docs are even more confused than I realized. But AWS in particular seems to have an official place we can link to if we need it, if you don't want to use anything that I just sent you to. I'm going to link to CloudStack just because it's the first one in the list, and otherwise you get something funky because you go.
Right.
Do we think there's less reason for people to do cloud integration with Azure and Google because there's already AKS and GK, whatever it's called?
GKE. I don't know. I can't honestly say. But
historically, the answer from the doc's perspective, historically the answer is no, because nobody's ever paid attention to that stuff. And what we have in the doc states from before GKE existed.
So that's a good. Liz poses a really good question because now that Amazon has their hosted service offering of EKS, will the cloud provider integration documentation matter for some things? Let's take a stand that we should link out to stuff as almost like a precondition step at this point.
Linking out to the actual cloud provider docs?
Well, some type of link to manage, to think about cloud providers before you start to do your setup. Because
so I think it's complicated though, because like in the case of AWS, you have to set kind of that host name override. Otherwise, kubeadm init won't even work, regardless of whether you try to enable a cloud provider or not. Well, as long as you try to enable a cloud provider, you have to override it, and I don't think that's the case for the other clouds out there, and that's why I called that out for troubleshooting.
Yep. So I'm going to let you three start to take point on that particular aspect, and we'll kind of like loop back around to it and try to think about how we're going to do with it. But there should be definitely like some type of precondition as a prerequisite. So like right now, as part of the initial installation guide, we kind of have like a before you begins. As part of this, these notes should be prerequisites for init. And then part of the prerequisites, or even before you begin for kubeadm, will be like, are you integrating with a cloud provider? Because, storage volume amounts matter. And so does like, auto scaling stuff.
So just to be clear, I want to make sure this task is linking out to other docs, because I don't think us documenting like actual cloud provider integration makes much sense.
Yes, I totally agree.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Finding the canonical home for some of this stuff and making sure it's valid.
All
right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
What I think it is missing here is before troubleshooting is a guide, a smoke test guide that helps you in checking if the cluster is really working. I'm thinking, for instance, the smoke guide that exists at the end of Kubernetes the hard way. There are free tests that make you check if the DNS really work, if exec, kubectl exec works, and so on. Do you think that it is worth to have a smoke test guide also in the kubeadmin part of the site?
I think linking to a smoke test guide makes a lot of sense. I don't necessarily know if I want to include it directly into kubeadmin proper. So I do think that I can take point on that because we wrote Sonobui, and part of that's used for CNCF conformance. So we can link out to that, and we can also say, like, if you don't want to do that, you can do it the harder way.
So Minikube, they have a tutorial basically how to deploy a hello world type of application. And when I first encountered kubeadm, I used the Minikube guide to deploy my test application on kubeadmin created cluster. So maybe we can do something like that.
Yeah, why don't we do like add a next steps? Now your cluster successfully stood up. What's next, right? Like link to the what you can do afterwards. Like what's next? Add the other bits into there as part of a smoke test, right? Your cluster. Does that seem legit?
Yes.
Right, cool. So I will add that to, where is the thing? Nope, this one. All right. So I want to go through meta topics now because we're running out of time to go through it. I do know that Chuck and Ruben are working on the HA update, and maybe we should set up a separate little conversation to have, or put it inside of Slack to see if other people are interested, to basically do a walkthrough and a redux of the current HA documentation that calls out using kubeadm phases and all the details for that. It would also kind of use some of the new stuff that Lucas has created to make it a cleaner deployment option for a stacked master, because that's a simplified HA environment for most folks. And this is kind of something we're working on, but we want to make sure that it aligns with what other folks are thinking. How does communicating via Slack and maybe setting up some other time to talk about this stuff, or a contrary thing would be if you want to be CC'd on all the PRs, you can raise your hand now.
I will follow the HA things. I will participate.
Okay. The problem with some of the HA documentation too is it's kind of split, and I don't know why it's split. Where's my main thing here? Setup has a piece of HA documentation, but then if you go underneath tasks, there's the separate other upgrade documentation, and some of that needs to be pruned and cleaned. I
would suspect that the reason it's split is because the person who wrote the other one didn't know about the setup page, which is why I put my HA docs in the tasks.
So does it make sense to rationalize all of the HA? Where does it make sense to rationalize the life cycle aspects of HA? Because there's the separate doc that exists, and it's versioned independently underneath tasks. I think it's over here.
Yeah, under administrator cluster. Yeah. I mean, I think if you're setting something up like the etcd stuff literally has setup in the title, I think that's pretty reasonable to move that under setup.
Okay. And then there's life cycle aspects of this.
Yeah.
So what I'm kind of thinking is that there'd almost be like underneath setup, there would almost be separate issues, right? Like one is setting up the cluster, and I don't know if it makes sense to have it underneath setup or not. So here's
tasks are more like upgrades to me. I would put upgrades under tasks.
Okay, that seems reasonable.
What about installing kubeadm? Because that's got its whole own topic right now under tasks.
It does?
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go. Sorry, I said it was going to link to my spreadsheet, and I didn't. I will, because it doesn't have the reference docs in it, but it's got everything else.
Why can't this cross-link to the setup portion?
Oh, it can. We can link to whatever, but I still think it makes sense to group things sensibly, and which doesn't really feel like it's the case at the moment.
It's not. So who wants to take, I think Lubomir and I, as well as the people working on HA, will have to rationalize tasks.
And we should log everything with issues because I'm starting to lose track of things.
Yep, I'm going to do the same thing. So what I'm going to try and do after this meeting is I'm going to take a look at Jennifer's spreadsheet. I'm going to take a look at the current backlog that exists inside of our repository. And then I'm going to take a look at the notes that we currently have from walking through some of this stuff and try to slice through all of them to get a concrete list of action items that we can execute against. Does that seem like a reasonable approach?
Yes, I'm gonna do that myself.
And the spreadsheet's got suggestions for how to think about it too. Not what to do, but like indicating whether we remove something or move it and where we move it to. So if you want to use that or attach it to an issue, whatever you want to do with it. I gave everybody edit permissions.
Okay, and you put that in the channel, right?
Oh, sorry, no, I put it in the minutes.
Okay. I will look through the minutes then. I think we're nearing time. So I want to see if there are other sort of documentation things that we've only kind of touched it, really. We need to go back now and actually like rationalize these separate sources of information and make sure that we can execute in a reasonable time frame. Are there other big things that we're kind of missing that people are aware of?
Mine are all in the spreadsheet.
Anybody else?
I don't think we went through some of the issues we have, so we have to do it after the talk, I guess. Some of the issues we have in the kubeadm repository.
There's levels of overlap all over the place here. So
yeah.
We need to Highlander these problems and get one canonical location we can like execute against. Either use the repository, use the spreadsheet or whatever. But let's chat about that afterwards.
I have one question. This might be a little off topic. Is it okay to start making issues that for known upgrade like problems? So sorry, the thing that Jason suggested the other day. It's linked to in the doc. The like the 111 known issues where
inside the
like things that don't get backported. Yeah, not inside the troubleshooting guide, but just like the creating issues that are tagged as like kind/bug and has workaround. So things that don't get backported but have workarounds.
Yeah, the suggestion here was to introduce a couple of new labels which we can use to create like a filtered link to our repository where the users can see like the issues which have solutions and basically the bugs we know about.
I do think that should be listed. That should be linked to the troubleshooting guide. But that I do agree that we should probably create a new label of some kind
I like this because it helps me close a fair number of tickets. Or, oh well, that's unfair. At least one ticket, probably more.
So are there, why don't we just take this to, I know Liz and I assigned Chuck, Jason, and Jennifer to that one troubleshooting aspect relating to cloud providers. Why don't we just make that change there? I know Liz is on point for working on the troubleshooting aspects.
I guess you can close this issue and basically move the information to the troubleshooting issue. I think this is.
Yeah, but we need a labeling system. We need to just say like has workaround.
Yeah, I guess my point is to combine the two issues.
Yes. Well, why don't we converse on Slack and just rationalize it and we'll go.
Okay. Yeah, or if anyone has comments, just post them in this issue. It's linked in the minutes.
I'll cross-link with the troubleshooting guide here too inside this issue.
Yeah, from the perspective of a former release notes wrangler, having both issues, at least until we get things completely resolved, looks useful.
Okay. So again, after this, I'm going to try and go through Jennifer's spreadsheet, the current backlog, and the issues that are currently logged across both website and the kubeadm repo and potentially the KK repo, and try and make sense of all the issues. Any other last things? I think what we might want to do is kind of like keep track of this and post it inside of Slack so folks can follow along. And if there are issues that folks want to or have time to be involved in, please let us know and we'd be happy to federate where possible.
What is the timeline for the doc code freeze?
Jennifer?
Sorry, my mouse went wandering for a moment. So docs PRs are supposed to be merged for the release by next Monday. However, I think we're in pretty good shape. And I need to confirm that because there's a bunch of issues with docs PRs that are merged against features that might not make it in. So I need to circle around. I'll give you guys an update in Slack.
Okay.
That's my current understanding is next Monday.
All right. So I have an idea. I'll post it in Slack and see what people think about it. But I'm thinking for each major page, basically have like close out a lot of the other issues, maybe cross-link them. But for each major page, basically open an issue, and then cross-link to a doc that we can bike shit on. And then that way, instead of us having like dozens of issues all over the place, we have just the listing of the actual doc pages and then the details of how they're of how we plan on modifying them. That seems way simpler than trying to do all the other stuff. Quick thoughts before I hang up.
Okay,
yeah,
for me.
Because if you try to sort through the docs website issues against kubeadm, you're going to get a whole lot of mess that's not related to anything you guys want to deal with.
Exactly. All right, I'm gonna do that first, and I'll take a look at the other stuff. Right, cool. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.